Good evening. I'm Jenny Beaker. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Ferndale. Thank you for joining us tonight. Here in the room, we've got some attendees, and then we hope that folks will be able to follow this online later. We are talking tonight about a significant project through Downtown Ferndale, the Downtown Ferndale Development Authority, about wayfinding and sidewalk improvements. This has been a few years in the making, and we're excited to be really getting things going now at the end of 2025 for some really cool changes you can expect to see in 2026. So to give a little bit of a background about this project, going back to 2022, there was a revitalization and placemaking application from the DDA and the city of Ferndale for approximately $1 million. Unfortunately, we were not awarded that then. This has been a while in the making for some sidewalk improvement and wayfinding updates. We thought we had a good proposal then, but grant funders did not agree. We went back for a second version of that in 2023, going in with the other communities that are within Main Street, Oakland County for a larger scale group submission. That would have been approximately $900,000 total project. That too was not selected, unfortunately, but a good thing, the Oakland County Commissioners in 2024 recognized the value of projects like this and others throughout Oakland County and the importance they had for placemaking and making inviting spaces in our downtown communities. So our submission on behalf of Ferndale was $438,000 from DDA funding for $292,000 matching through Main Street, Oakland County. That's a 60-40 split for about $730,000 project. And we've also since been working with the city of Ferndale for an additional $50,000 coming in for signage throughout the city of Ferndale. So this falls under Oakland County's Placemaking and Public Spaces Program Grant. And just to give an overview of what this entails is really we wanted to do a kind of a facelift throughout the downtown area. Foremost, we realized that this is going to be really important to have community input. What do visitors, what do our residents, what do our regular employees and anyone who's routinely in the downtown see as the need for wayfinding? And we realized the importance of having a professional firm to help facilitate those discussions with us, identify some best practices, and make sure that what we introduce is going to be state of the art, but in a responsible state of the art, I'll say. So this will also include eventually after the design through our professional firm, it'll be installation of the wayfinding and signage throughout the downtown. This includes things like signs for parking, some signs for major destinations, some signs for orienting between Woodward and 9 Mile and other corridors in the area, and just helping people in general navigate the spaces, what they're coming to downtown Ferndale to look for and how they will get around. It's also in terms of the sidewalk repairs, moving the damaged flags. Flags are the 5x5 squares, typically that concrete comes in downtown sidewalks, especially those areas that have brick pavers that are more than 20, I think 30 years old, that are chipping. They're uneven walking spaces. They're not great for anything with wheels, whether it's a mobility device or a child stroller or just anyone who might not be watching their footing all the way. And then also trying to work on some structural adjustments where that's possible. We've got some areas with a little bit of higher slope than is convenient or safe for some people. And then just recognizing where does parking butt up into, where we've got bike parking, what makes the most sense so that we can accommodate those to the extent possible through this project. On the whole, we are really excited about the benefits for this because it will make a more encouraging and inviting space downtown. We always talk about how our ethos is you belong here. We want people to feel safe and comfortable whenever they're navigating our downtown, whether that means orienting themselves, trying to find out how to get from point A to point B, but also getting there safely so they're not having to worry about trips or bumps along the way, that they're not going to spill or drop anything because of an uneven sidewalk. The signage is also going to introduce more consistency and cohesiveness to remove some of that sign blindness, where right now we've got a few different colors of green. We've got some green and white. We've got state colors. We've got rainbow colors in other places, making sure that we've got recognizable and polished signs that people can identify easily and use when they're in the downtown area. So overall, this is going to improve the accessibility, navigability, and mobility throughout downtown. And we're excited about introducing an aesthetic that can be expanded throughout the rest of the city, and also honoring our historic centennial that's coming up in 2027. So we're excited to involve multiple stakeholders in this process, whether it's, again, our appreciation for arts and beautification, our Accessibility and Inclusion Awareness Commission, and the Historical Society, all of our stakeholders, all the things that we're passionate about for inclusivity in downtown Ferndale. For an overall timeline and planned budget, this is a projection that we had earlier this year. So the timeline right now has shifted about 1 month, but that is still very much feasible for us to accomplish this as planned by early summer, late spring of 2026. We are now in early December, so we are initiating the community input sessions and analysis for the wayfinding design with our professional firm Merge that was selected through a procurement earlier this season. They were selected and reviewed by the DDA board and awarded a publicly competitive contract back in October of 2025. And then we are kicking off the discovery phase this week with some stakeholder sessions, including tonight's public info session. After this, we are expecting in the next few months to have some design concepts to review. We'll be gathering public input on a few elements of that to make sure that we get a design that is really, that everyone is excited about the design as we are, that it's going to be useful and practical and effective when it's going in the ground over the course of the next year or two. So once that design is aligned throughout early 2026, we will send the signage out for bid again for public compliance, making sure that we get competitive pricing for that sign installation, and that we're also aligning that installation with our engineering firm, Giffords Webster, and the Department of Public Works, who assists for all of these things in our downtown maintenance. Again, just to recap on the total project budget, it is expected to cost in the area of $730,000. We are looking for additional funding as we see elements that may come into scope for this. We wanted to make sure that we do this effectively and that we are mindful of our budget, but that we are effective in the delivery of total value for this, that we've got something that looks nice and really looks effective in our downtown, and then hitting as many of those sidewalk improvements as we can to make sure that we've got, great things on signage in the air and on the ground and all around in downtown Ferndale. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to our partners, John and Glenn from Merge Designs, and let them tell you a little bit more about the public process and what to expect moving forward.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Bozio with Merge, and Glenn Swantak with Merge as well. We're just going to go through a little bit of a presentation to give you an idea of sort of the scale and scope of the project, and show you some examples from other places as we get started with this. Just real quick on Merge, we are an environmental graphic design firm, and we focus on community wayfinding. This is a list of some projects and clients that we've had across the country. We have completed projects for large downtowns like San Diego and Phoenix, and small communities like Fredericksburg, Texas. It has like 8,000 people. So a lot of lessons learned that we can bring to this project, and we're already, as to our stakeholder meetings today, saw a number of things that were sort of that we've seen before, and we can sort of facilitate ideas about it. I said to everybody as we went through this project, also people often think that Glenn and I come into town and we run around and put up signs everywhere. It's not what we do. Signs are a big part of what we're going to talk about and look at tonight. But as we go through this process, we look at this holistically. So from the moment someone decides to visit Ferndale, when they go to your website, what kind of information do they get? How are they using their phone to find their way? Or is there a digital strategy that can be integrated as a layer into their journey? how does the environment play a role in their ability to find their way, right? So you have very good wayfinding infrastructure here in the sense that it's a grid, it's numbered 8 mile, 9 mile, 10 mile to tell you you're going the right way. You have landmarks such as public art or the crow's nest that give you an orientation to where you are. So we want to take advantage of that as we go through this process. There's support information, so maps, brochures, visitor guides, all of that is wayfinding as well. So hopefully we can start to get these things to talk to each other and reinforce each other as well. And then when you start to think about gateways, think about a big picture in, right? So gateway elements that welcome you to Ferndale, or identify your arrival to downtown. Vehicular signs that get you to the different destinations, whether that's the historical museum or city hall or parking. And then you have to identify parking. So parking is something we've talked a lot about in our stakeholder meetings today, and we'll get deeper into those details as we go through the project. Then you get out of your car and you become a pedestrian. What type of information do you need? Are there kiosks that provide you an orientation, or pedestrian signs that tell you it's only 3 minutes, to a nearby destination? And then are there interpretive elements that tell your story and really sort of express the character and culture of the place? So these are things that we will start to look at as we go through the process. Glenn's going to run through a series of photos that illustrate the different types of wayfinding tools.
So yeah, these are all wayfinding elements and wayfinding tools that we would use as part of the project. Not to say that we would do them all here in Ferndale, but these are some of our projects, just to give you an idea of the size and the scale and how customizable some of these elements are. So, gateways that announce your arrival, whether that's into a city or into like a downtown district. This is in downtown San Diego, so this is a monumental gateway element. Or it can be as simple as a post and panel sign that does still have the character of the type styles and the maybe patterns and colors of a place. So it's a unique entry into that community. This is in Oxnard, California. And then you start to pick up your vehicular signs, right? So we do have to follow the MUTCD and the DOT standards for vehicular signage, reflective backgrounds, arrow styles. But we do have opportunities at the top to have customizable, things that are particular or that are unique to, say, Ferndale, or even on the backs of the signs. But when you get down into more neighborhoods or historic districts or lower speed roadways, we bring that scale down. And then maybe also bring in things like decorative bases that are part of the architecture and the environment of that area. We just don't want to put huge signs up in a neighborhood or in a downtown zone. And then parking. Parking is a huge part of this project, and there's different ways that we can look at it. We typically see, and what you have out there now are the standard green and white parking, or P-arcing signs that we call them. And there are other ways you can do it too. You can do a combination of incorporating maybe that arrow with a color scheme or even taking it all the way to a custom system that has more of a designed look that fits the environment, like we did in Savannah, Georgia. So we definitely want to have parking signage as a separate wayfinding, I guess, sub-wayfinding category for the overall wayfinding program. This is an example in Williamsburg, Virginia, where we created the parking program, directing to a parking garage, or in this case, a parking terrace, identifying that with a unique shape and color scheme. But when you get to the parking lots, having clear identification, and in this case, a numbering system that says that it is public parking, right, which is something that Ferndale currently needs desperately. You can even have information about parking, if it's paid parking, if it's free parking, the hours that you're allowed to park there. But you want to incorporate that all into one sign instead of maybe having multiple signs. And then you get out of your car and you become a pedestrian. So having information at those parking lots in a kiosk form or wayfinding information In this case, in Williamsburg, you can see we're still carrying through that same shape, so it's a consistent style that runs all the way throughout. We're using a digital element here that is solar powered. It is e-paper. It is almost like a large Kindle or reading device, but it's a screen that gets changed, not always, but it is updatable. And then also maps, static maps, sort of that same shape of a kiosk. But again, locating them in key spots where there's a lot of pedestrians that are gathering or at the parking lot exits. And then also having it as a family of different kiosks. So we're not just saying every area will get a large double-posted kiosk. Some of them will have to go into areas where you don't have a lot of room, ADA accessibility. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that as well. One thing to think about with kiosks are this is an opportunity to incorporate things like public art. In Asheville, North Carolina, we had local artists create the patterns at the bottom, but also think about it as an opportunity to not only tell people where they need to go, like with a map, but on the third side or second side, start to promote things like, say, a music scene or a culture or heritage or history or events, upcoming events. Ferndale has a lot of events that maybe, you're here now in December and maybe you see something that an event is coming up and you will come back in a couple of months and go to that event. So we look at wayfinding as a marketing opportunity for these types of things as well. Pedestrian signage that says, not only what district you're on or maybe even what street you're on, but also directs you back to parking and does it with minutes and not necessarily blocks. Every city has a different block size, right? I mean, here you could have a block that's a mile long. So we want to make sure that, people understand how far it is to get to a place, if it's 9 minutes away or if it's a couple of minutes away. Street signs are a good way to create identity in a community. So whether that's in a historic district like here, where there are brown signs, or a neighborhood, but also maybe having those a little bit different to create an area like, say, if you're in the downtown, maybe those street signs are unique and they just reinforce that you're in the downtown area. Bike signs, if you have special bike lanes or bike programs that maybe you wanted to promote, we can create an identity for that and make these an enhanced bicycle program. Again, we're not saying that you need this or we're going to do this, but these are things that we have done as wayfinding tools. Digging deeper into the heritage or the history of a place, so having history markers or interpretive signs that tell the story of a place, like this one in Asheville, North Carolina. Sidewalk compasses could provide orientation or what district you're within. Decorative crosswalks. Public art, which Ferndale has a lot of, and I think is a unique characteristic of Ferndale. Murals that not only could act as an artistic wayfinding or placemaking tool, but can also provide maybe direction to a parking garage that is hidden, and it's hard to get to. But instead of doing it with a sign, maybe we can do it in an artistic way or, to get people to the, say, a parking garage or a parking lot. Also, we talk about marketing, but, creating these elements and landmarks that if you think about social media, it reaches beyond your borders. So is there something that you can, somebody can take a picture of or pose with and it'll go on Instagram or social media and it can promote Ferndale and have a greater reach to a greater audience. And then thinking about the different conditions, what does it look like at night? What is it going to look like in conditions like when it's snowing out, or when, how can we design it so that it is an effective wayfinding tool. And then lastly, thinking about digital and digital components, whether that's a QR code on a kiosk or in this case, this was in Newark, New Jersey, where this was a historic walking tour. So you can have on your phone, you can have the walking tour. It can count your steps, how far it is to get to the next stop. but also having those physical elements in place where every time you see a green circular element on the pole, that's where you know is going to be your next stop. It's like breadcrumbs along the way. So we're always also looking at incorporating digital elements as well into wayfinding.
So we're very much at the master plan stage of this, and as Glenn said, it's not to say that we're going to use all those tools here in Ferndale, but they're sort of on the table, and then we have a lot of discussions with the stakeholders to see which ones sort of resonate and which ones are necessary as we go through it. You know, we'll go through this process, and we may come out of it with 20 recommendations, and then the board and the city will decide maybe they'll do all 20, maybe they'll just do 2. That will depend on funding and priorities, and that phasing strategy will be worked out as we go through the process. You can think of the process or the project in these 3 categories. There's the strategy or the administration of it. You know, who gets included on the signs? Where does the funding come from? Who's going to maintain the system? And then there's the wayfinding of how do people get from point A to point B? What's the best route? Where do they park? Are there connections we can make along the way? And then lastly, the design, as Glenn showed with those other projects, you know, how does it capture the character and culture of Ferndale, but at the same time also be maintainable and sustainable from a management standpoint on a long-term basis. And then we'll just run through the methodology real quick. We are, I'll zoom in on this, we are at the very beginning of the assessment or wayfinding analysis. We're just trying to gather as much information and outline what the wayfinding issues are and make those recommendations of what that wayfinding philosophy will be. And then we'll come back also with schematic design of 3 different design options to present to the stakeholders and get feedback on the overall design direction. So during that, we'll show 5 or 6 sign types and get those comments of what resonates with people from an aesthetic standpoint. We'll eventually move to programming, which is creating sign location plans and the messages for the exact sequencing of information and going out into the field and looking at locations with Public Works. And then design development is really taking that selected option and expanding it across all the different sign types that might be necessary. May include a prototype or sample materials and full-size elements to look at in the field. And then eventually it gets to bid document. So we should make 2 points clear. One is we do not fabricate or install signs. We will put together the documentation and specifications so that the city can send that out and get bids from qualified vendors. We should also note that we are not adding to what's out there. Everything comes down and gets replaced with a signage system. You do not have a signage system, you have signs, right? So we will create a consistent look across all of those different elements. And then lastly, it goes out to bid and construction admin so we can be involved in the oversight of how that, you know, of the implementation of that, shop drawings and color samples and that sort of thing. Right, so this is what's out there now. You know, some of these have been damaged. The map hasn't been updated in a long time. We'll see how much of this can be maybe reused in some cases, like the footers. And then you have the, you know, some of the vehicular signs that are out there as well. They're not really compliant to the current requirements of vehicular directional signs. These were put up in 2010. The latest rule, there was a recent change in 2023, but most going back to 2009 is when community wayfinding was really added to the manual. So with that, we'll take any questions, I guess, from the audience, or how do you want to do this?
And in our public outreach, we did also want to include a variety of just considerations, things that folks can be thinking about if you've got questions about the presentation and the content that we shared from either side today, and then also just some additional points for thought.
We also will be doing a wayfinding survey online now that we've been here and have identified some of the issues. We have questions we'll put out there to folks as well.
Please feel free to raise your hand and I'll bring you over the microphone.
Fantastic.
Well,
Thank you. We wanted to emphasize for folks, this is the first of these style of presentation. This is the first opportunity for public engagement in this wayfinding and sidewalk initiative, but it's certainly not the last. So we are looking forward to the next several months of great collaboration with John and Glenn from Merge. We also do have a diverse a diverse steering committee that consists of DDA board members, some other members of the community. Ferndale Area District Library is involved, also affirmations, and we have council representation and other city management partners on that as well. So we wanted to make sure that we had a variety of stakeholders who are included in this and making ourselves available for any questions or comments, concerns that might come up throughout the process. And anyone from our business community, you can certainly expect more information coming from us as we get underway with the project, especially towards the installation side of things when there is downtown construction. We are going to be working diligently to coordinate that around special events to make to minimize the disruption to traffic downtown. There will be some with especially the sidewalk repair, but we will be communicating that well in advance. This kind of project will be in close coordination with DPW, and the contractors will be working closely with us. It will not be really that similar to Woodward, the Woodward Road Diet that we underwent a few years ago. This should be much smaller in scale, and we will be working actively to communicate that so that people know where to go, and it should not impact our special event season that we know people come to Ferndale to enjoy. And I see a question in the room.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. This relates to the sidewalk replacement, actually. Have we discussed or priced out having heating placed underneath the sidewalks to deal with events such as the weather today?
That is a great thought. We have not looked at heat insulation for the sidewalks. The scope of this project is going to be replacement of damaged flags only. So it's not that we're tearing up all of the sidewalk and replacing everything. I'm not an engineer, but I would expect that kind of installation would require removing even flags that are not damaged and installing more infrastructure underneath then. I think with the scope of our budget as well, we weren't in a position to undertake that with this project in particular. As the DDA, though, we do sponsor sidewalk clearance. So we have been, for the past 2 years, contracting that out to a third party and continuing to look at that relationship with them if we need to expand clearance further, because we recognize that is certainly something important in the winter season. We don't want people to be discouraged from the downtown or disenfranchised from the downtown because there's inclement weather.
And just maybe keeping in thought that putting some of the infrastructure even in the replacing ones, so that when we do actually have time or budget, that would already be in place and we wouldn't have to replace things that were already replaced.
That's a great thought. Thank you. You have to.
I have to be on mic. Okay.
Or I can repeat the question for you if you want.
Now, is the scope of the project just the downtown area, or is it going to be the whole city?
For the sidewalks, it will just be in the downtown. For right now, our scope is starting on 9 Mile first, and we are looking at options to expand the sidewalk repair along Woodward. Similar to the neighborhoods, property owners are responsible for a good condition of a sidewalk in front of their property. But we also recognize right now it's not always easy for tenants or businesses to undertake that kind of expense. So that's why the DDA recognized the value in investing in the infrastructure that the public uses. For the signage and wayfinding, that will start specifically in the downtown. This is the area that we think most people do think of when they think of Ferndale. They come to the downtown primarily. And then we are looking at our city partners for other opportunities to expand this. So if there are things that we put beyond our downtown district, other entrances to the city, for example, the ways that folks might come in from the east, west, north, or south, or even, from other boulevards, making sure that they recognize, hey, you're suddenly in Ferndale and you're happy to be here. So the intention with that scope was to come up with something that would be distinctly Ferndale with the focus on the downtown, but in a way that would be consistent with the other branding and style guide that the city communications teams have worked very diligently on. Oh, yep. The
Our-
follow-up
our-
with parks. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
our overall master plan, wayfinding master plan, will include all of those elements and will be more of a citywide master plan, but the implementation part of it will then be mostly in the downtown area as the first phase. So that can be done later in different timeframes.
I really love the idea of the digital component of it all. Ferndale is a very fluid city. It changes a lot. Once the pieces are in place, how difficult or what kind of plan is there to be able to change things out as they evolve?
Yes, whether it's static or digital, you have to be honest with yourselves regarding the sort of management of content, right? And you have to make sure that you do have a mechanism to keep that up to date. We see plenty of digital screens that are just blank. And that's because they spent a lot of money putting them in, but then no one really had the responsibility to update the information. So that will be part of sort of the pros and cons and opportunities and obstacles when we present that type of information so that those decisions can be made.
So the actual physical pieces should focus more on things that aren't going to change, like the parking signs, the parking structures,
Yeah,
things
so
like that.
the wayfinding system that's static is really on those higher level things that don't change. So parking lots, City Hall's not moving anywhere, those sort of things. Oh, I should knock on wood on that one. Yeah. Historical society, those kind of things. We did talk about the design being modular, so I should.
I will emphasize that modular was the great name for this because we recognize there is always change. So, if things flip-flop on Eastern and West Woodward or if they go somewhere else, we will make it so it's a way that is, one element can be moved
We do
wherever
not
it needs
direct
to.
to business, like private businesses, so that churn of businesses doesn't affect as much as maybe the kiosks.
Does that answer your question?
I realize that there's more of a focus on the west side, but will we be seeing these things on the east side as well? Because we have the parks, we have the curling club, we have things like that as well.
Yes, and the fun thing is that we actually took a little tour around Ferndale and looked at the curling club and thought, hey, here is a great thing that we have international visitors coming on a fairly regular basis to check out the curling club. So this, again, why it was designed in a way that could be scaled up for the rest of the city. Within parks and other neighborhoods, that would be within the city's discretion and those departmental budgets. But that is the intention, that people can start to recognize these systems that John and Glenn keep mentioning, that they'll recognize, hey, I can follow this to my destination, whether that's in the downtown or not. And with those, I think, will intend to have some places of interest that are public interest, not private entities, not private businesses, really called out for the wayfinding in the downtown. But we will have some suggestions of like, hey, if you're on this side, if you keep going this way, here's some points of interest you may find. Any further questions? Fantastic. Well, seeing no further questions, we'll conclude tonight's session. We'll be here for at least a few more minutes if anything else comes to mind. And for anyone listening online, if you see this and it prompts some inspiration, you have thoughts about some of these questions, please reach out to us in the DDA. You can reach us at info@downtownferndale.com. You can also reach out to us through our board members. My name is Jenny, Jennie. My email is jenny@downtownferndale.com. Thanks, John and Glenn, and for those who joined us.